Alright guys, so today what I thought I'd do, having spoken to quite a few of you, is go through the basics of recovery. I'm talking about recovering from training, not injuries. They're two very, very different subjects. So this is kind of assuming that you're not rehabbing or recovering from a injury that's stopping you playing or impacting your playing. This is just recovering from any training really. These all applies to, but for you guys mainly talking football and practice and your weights training that you're doing. So we're kind of split up into three categories of, first up, stuff that works. This is stuff that definitely works, has a huge impact. Stuff that kind of works, so it's things that have a little impact and been shown to help sometimes, but not too much, but also really rely on having these first things nailed before they really do too much. And stuff that doesn't really work and can actually be very detrimental to you potentially. So we'll start off with the stuff that works. These are the things that are like massive bang for buck. They do a lot and they really, really need to be adhered to if you're going to get any sort of recovery done, let alone optimizing it. So first off, starting, this one's a bit harder. So train within your ability. I don't mean like how fast you are, how strong you are. Everyone has at ATS and other places, things like Renaissance periodization is where we found this and first thought about it, but it's your maximum recoverable volume. We throw it around as MRV sometimes, and that's the most amount of training you can do within a week and still recover from it. So in a gym example, that might be, you might be only able to do 20 working sets of squats in a week and be able to recover from that next week. And if you do 21, 22, 23, then you're not recovered by the next week, and every week you're compounding your fatigue over and over and over again. Running, there's a certain overall volume of running that you can't recover from, all these things. So we need to make sure we're under that. If you're not under that, nothing else on this board matters. You're physically incapable of recovering from that. This ceiling's usually higher than most people think. It's not just that you're fucked from training and you feel sore the next day, or training's super, super difficult, like in the cardio, you're absolutely burst at the end. That's not it. It's higher than that. But yeah, it also adapts over time, so you can recover from things you're used to better as things goes on. So the conditioning, things that we're doing like that, you can recover from that better the more you do it, the more you train it. So that's number one. Next one, sleep and relaxing and managing your stress. Sleep's a big one. If you're not getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night on average, then that's going to be one of the biggest ones we want to try and nail. You can top it up with napping. Not ideal, we kind of want that big block, but it is possible. I appreciate for guys with like ranch job schedules and kids, all this sort of stuff, it's really difficult. But 7 to 8 hours, 6 plus really at a necessity. And then we're looking at optimally 8 to 10 hours is perfect, but that's quite difficult for most people who are like their sport or activity is not their job. Like athletes, it's simpler because it's got such a high onus. You plan that into your training day, whereas for you guys that's going to be quite difficult. Relax, so whether that's playing video games, shopping, fucking whatever it is, painting miniatures, whatever you do to relax, make sure you do some of that every single day or a few times a week, as much as you can. Appreciate it's difficult to fit in, but even an hour a day, half an hour a day has a big impact just to reduce your kind of overall stress and help you recover from training. And talking stress, managing stress. We all get different anxieties, different stressors throughout the day. For some people, kids, family, others work, whatever's stressing you out. Sometimes it's absolutely impossible. Fully appreciate not everything can be managed. Sometimes it just happens. Some people work certain periods of the month are super, super stressful. We can relate that back into how much training you're doing. So if every single week, as an example, one of my clients, the last week of every month is super, super busy. So all of our training in that last week of the month is a lot reduced because we're not managing the stress of work, we're managing the stress of training to allow for that. So those are some basic things. Sleep, key. Light days deal with inactive rest. This kind of fires back into training within your abilities. So if you're finding yourself not recovering quite as well, you're a bit fatigued. One of my clients had this week when we took a light day. So what I mean by light day weights wise is halving your normal volume. that you would do. So say you've got 5 exercises in a day, each with 5 working sets, 6 working sets for easy maths. So you still do all 5, but you're going to do 3 working sets. So you half the amount of work you're doing in one day. Easy way to kind of catch up a little bit on recovery. Deloads, these are essentially a few lighter days strung together. For us, we usually do a week. Can be a week and a half depending on how severe the stress is at the moment, but usually about a week, and you'll string that out doing the half volume. And then active rest for you guys and the wolves, this will be more what I try and do at the end of a season. So it's a week or 2 period where it's essentially just go off and kind of do whatever you want training wise, just don't gain a bunch of body weight unless that's the aim for your position. Don't lose a bunch of muscle mass and don't lose a ton of fitness. It's quite hard to do in 2 weeks, you almost have to actively try to do that. But it'll be a couple of weeks and you should come back feeling pretty refreshed and ready to go. Diet's another one, it's kind of a big one. If you're not eating to sustain the training you're doing, your body's going to really struggle to recover. So all training, but specifically weight training, really damages the muscles in order for them to build back up and grow. It's kind of what recovering from training is. It's a lot deeper than that, but that's kind of what we're looking at, is you essentially put stress on your body, slightly breaks down your body recovers from that and then overshoots so that it adapts for the stress you're putting on it. And that's kind of the basic process of how we get better as athletes. So diet's really important for that, because food is essentially the building blocks of that repair your body does. Main one is protein, and that's the building blocks of all muscle cells, and tissue in general is all made up of proteins. So we want a high protein diet. For you guys, we're looking for somewhere between 1.8 to 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight per day. And then we've got carbohydrates and fats. Fats, anything above 60 grams per day is enough. Anything below that, essentially fats are used to produce hormones. Hormones are like testosterone is a big one everyone knows about, but they produce hormones in your body that are for a whole host of body regulation things, but also involved in recovery. So we need those. And carbohydrates fuel exercise, plain and simple. So for you guys doing something, especially in and around practice, 4 grams per day per kilo of body weight is a good start. So yeah, that's all the stuff that works. This stuff's super, super powerful. It does a lot, and without nailing those, all the rest of this stuff doesn't really matter, because you've not nailed the big stuff. Kind of like thinking of really super awesome like routes to run and past routes to do and stuff, but not like nailing the fundamentals of blocking on the other line so your QB gets lit up. Kind of pointless throwing anything fancy in. So stuff that kind of works. And this is stuff that, if you nail everything else, can have a decent impact. I find a lot it depends person on person. So some people just don't like a certain mode of recovery, and then it just doesn't really work for them. It's all about kind of managing your stress, relaxing, and letting your body recover. So if it puts your body in a heightened state of tension, as it were, it's not really going to work. So if guys absolutely fucking despise every single second of an ice bath, it might not work for them. It might just jack up their heart rate and actually add to their total stress in a week rather than taking it away. We're always looking about taking it away. So heat, ice, compression. These are sometimes, heat and ice are sometimes called thermal modalities, but heat and ice can have a positive effect. But also, the interesting one about these, and especially in the not very much ones, is it's all about, we have a certain cup, as it were, of an amount we can do every single week. And heat and ice and compression can add to that cup. So say your training fills up your cup 75% of the way. This can start adding to that. So rather than taking away, it can add and add and add, and then essentially it's kind of an old adage, then your cup's overflowing and you have to go to one of these more extreme recovery aspects of either deload or active rest. Hopefully that kind of analogy makes sense to you guys. So heat and ice can be beneficial, same with compression. So you've got things like compression tights, or the super fancy Novatech pants, is I think what they're called. You'll see potentially a bunch of pro athletes in them, but it's a big thing of it's almost like a cast, and they chuck you in them, and then there's varying pressure sent through them. Yeah, electronic stimulation, so there's lots of different things about that, more prevalent in injury than anything else, but that's things like massage guns to a certain extent, but mainly if you see the tendo units and stuff that contract the muscles for you, they can have an advantage. The big one around that is it comes with a big upfront cost. Same with the compression pads, and the benefit is negligible. You're far better off making sure you get a better diet with higher quality food and spending your money on that than you are on these things. But once you've nailed them down, these are something you can look at. The stuff that doesn't really work. There's a lot kind of thrown into this. And a lot of people say to add some of these things. Sometimes they're beneficial, sometimes not. So I'll go through them. Flexibility training or stretching, especially for you guys doing a lot of hard training. Flexibility is an aspect you need to do, and it needs to be done kind of little and often, but too much of it is bad. So flexibility training is like any training, lightweight training, light running training. It adds to that cut I mentioned earlier. It's a stress on your body that it has to adapt to. So if we add too much in, we're just going to be adding to that stress over and over and over again. American football is a funny one, not a funny one, but it's interesting because every single position has different flexibility requirements. So your offensive lineman, for example, has slightly different flexibility requirements to your corner or your linebacker, and then your quarterback, for example, has different flexibility requirements entirely because you've got a whole shoulder stabilization and flexibility thing built in there as well. So there's a lot of different things you can do, and essentially what we're looking to is maintain our current flexibility if we are sufficiently flexible for your position. If you're hyper flexible for your position, you might not need to focus it as much, like if you've got too much. And if you're not flexible enough, it's definitely something that you need to work on. Flexibility is a really tricky one because there's lots of different ways you can not be flexible enough for your position. So if you can't get into your stance, for example, there's lots of different ways that might be the case. Yeah, you might not be flexible enough, plain and simple. You also might not have the core strength or core stability to be able to hold that position, and that's quite difficult, and that's a different way. And then just biomechanically, you might have to set up slightly different to be in that position. So it takes a bit of time to figure out where that lies and what you need to do. But yeah, too much flexibility, not great. Cardio. Don't use this as an excuse to not fucking do your cardio, because y'all need it. But too much cardio, once you've got enough for your sport, is just adding more and more for you to recover to, and it's not good. Once you've got a top level cardio for your sport position, then you don't need to be adding more in from a recovery point of view. So you can, in theory, add light jogging and walking as recovery. I'd only really advise walking, to be honest, because anything else is adding stress. So walking potentially, but we're not talking about going off and sitting on the bike for an hour with your heart rate sitting at 150. That's not going to help you recover. That's just going to tan you in and add to the stress. But that's with the caveat of you being fit enough for your sport. So if you need to get fitter, that's an aspect of your training that you need to add in. And heat. Too much heat especially is really, really bad. So heat exposure is a thing, and all the coaches, if the coaches are watching this, will have gone through a heat exposure part of the coaching course, and a lot of the players will know about it. Every year it seems we hear about some high school football team that went out in the 30 plus degree heat and didn't allow their players any fucking water and did their pan in for 2 hours, and a couple of players ended up in hospital, or at worst even died. And overheat exposure is that serious. I'm not expecting any of you boys to do that in a recovery setting, but you can appreciate how even a little bit too much heat is bad. So if you're looking at the sauna or hot tub or steam room, something around the 20-minute mark is pretty good. We're going to get a little bit of recovery from that, but it's not reaching into those heat exhaustion aspects. But anything too much is again bad for you, dehydration and a whole host of other things. So yeah, that is the basics of recovery. As I said, mainly focus on this stuff that works. So training within your ability, sleep, relaxation, managing your stress, light days, deloads, and diet. If you have any questions at all, fire me a message. More than happy to answer any of them. And yeah, hopefully that helps and I wasn't too boring.